Chapter 1. The Mockery of Flesh. Dr. Zyrel of the Vorthan Empire had examined countless species across the galaxies. He had seen creatures with regenerative limbs, beings composed of pure energy, and organisms that could exist in the vacuum of space without aid. Yet, as he stood before the medical scan of the human subject, he couldn't contain his amusement. "This is primitive beyond belief," Zyrel scoffed, his twin mandibles clicking in amusement. "This creature is a walking contradiction. It is fragile, dependent on an absurd number of internal processes, and," he flicked a claw over the screen, enlarging the image of the circulatory system, "this is held together by mere pressure. A biological sack of fluids waiting to burst." His colleagues, fellow Vorthan researchers, chittered in agreement. Dr. Virek, his assistant, crossed his forearms and sneered. "And look at this so-called immune system. It doesn't even rewrite its genetic structure upon infection. It merely remembers." Laughter rippled through the lab. The idea that such a species had managed to survive, let alone travel through space, was beyond ridiculous. Zyrel shook his head. "The Council wastes its time studying these creatures. They are an evolutionary joke, destined to perish at the first sign of true hardship." He turned to Virek. "Run the standard analysis. I want to see how long this specimen has before it inevitably collapses from its own inefficiencies." "Yes, doctor." Virek activated the scanners. "Let's see what kind of pitiful results we get." They both leaned in, fully expecting to see a chart of genetic weaknesses, degenerative traits, and perhaps a few ticking biological time bombs. But what they saw made their mandibles stop clicking. And for the first time in his career, Dr. Zyrel was silent. Chapter 2. Anomalies and Impossibilities. The screen flickered with the results, and the Vorthan doctors stared in stunned silence. Virek was the first to recover. "This must be an error." His claws danced over the console, recalibrating the scanner. "Run it again." The machine whirred, bathing the human in another pass of golden light. The results refreshed. Unchanged. Dr. Zyrel's primary eyes narrowed, his secondary pair darting between data points. The human's biology was an enigma. "How is this possible?" he murmured. The subject, a human male, had undergone extensive injuries in the past, broken bones, torn ligaments, even severe internal trauma, yet every wound had fully healed with shocking efficiency. Not only that, but his cellular regeneration was operating at an accelerated rate without the usual genetic degradation seen in most species. "His body has endured conditions that should have killed him," Virek muttered, flipping through the data. "And yet he's still functional. More than functional. This level of adaptability is..." He trailed off. Zyrel's mind raced. Humans had no exoskeletons, no redundant organ systems, no inherent defense mechanisms beyond their weak skin and brittle bones. And yet, this human had adapted to survive through sheer biological willpower. "This isn't a fluke," Zyrel finally said, his voice low. "Their entire species is like this." Virek hesitated. "But that would mean..." Zyrel interrupted, "that humans are the most terrifying biological anomaly we have ever encountered." They had laughed at human biology. Now they weren't laughing anymore. Chapter 3. The Impossible Findings. Dr. Zylox sat in his sterile laboratory, surrounded by floating holoscreens filled with human test results. His four eyes squinted as he analyzed the baffling data in front of him. The results weren't just abnormal, they were downright impossible. "Preposterous," Zylox muttered, his mandibles clicking together in frustration. "There must be a mistake." He tapped a screen, commanding the system to rerun the analysis, but deep down he already knew the results wouldn't change. The human specimen, Captain James Carter, possessed biological attributes that defied everything the Galactic Medical Consortium had ever documented. His cellular regeneration rate was inexplicably high, comparable to that of the dreaded Zilithian hunters. His bones, when subjected to compression tests, exhibited resilience beyond that of the armored carapace of the warlike Zoggerans. But the most baffling discovery was the way his body metabolized toxins. Lethal substances that could kill even the hardiest of alien species had little to no effect on him. Zylox turned to his assistant, Dr. Yivna, whose skin shimmered an anxious shade of blue. "What do you make of this?" Yivna hesitated, her elongated fingers hovering over the hollow data. "Perhaps the testing equipment is malfunctioning," she suggested weakly. Xylox scoffed. We've tested over 1,000 different species. Never has our equipment failed us. He took a deep breath, trying to suppress the growing unease in his chest. We need to conduct further tests. A chime echoed through the lab, signaling an incoming transmission. The face of Supreme Medical Overseer Vrylock appeared on the main holoscreen. Dr. Xylox. Vrylock's voice resonated with authority. I trust you have completed your analysis on the human? Xylox hesitated for a fraction of a second before responding. Yes, Overseer. But the results are peculiar. Vrylock's eyes narrowed. Explain. Xylox took a deep breath. The human's biology defies logic. His regenerative capabilities, his resistance to toxins, his bone density. These traits should not be possible. Vrylock remained silent for a moment, then spoke in a measured tone. That is concerning. The council must be informed. In the meantime, continue your research. We must understand what makes this human so anomalous. Xylox nodded. Understood, Overseer. As the transmission ended, Xylox turned back to his assistant. Prepare the subject for the next phase of testing. I want to know what makes him so resilient. Little did they know they were about to uncover something that would change everything. Chapter 4. The Secrets Beneath the Skin. Captain James Carter sat in the medical chamber, arms crossed, watching the aliens with wary eyes. He had been patient thus far, submitting to their tests with minimal resistance. But he was growing tired of their endless prodding. What now? He asked as Dr. Xylox and Yvna entered the room. Xylox cleared his throat. We require additional samples. Bone marrow, deeper tissue scans, and a full neurological mapping. Carter raised an eyebrow. You already took blood, tissue, and who knows what else. Why do you need more? Xylox hesitated. Because your biology is not normal. Carter chuckled. Oh, I could have told you that. Xylox frowned. You do not seem surprised. Carter leaned forward. Doctor, you and your kind think you know everything about the universe. But here's the thing. Humans don't break as easily as you'd expect. Xylox narrowed his eyes. That does not explain your abilities. Carter smirked. Maybe we're just built different. Xylox ignored the human's smug response and proceeded with the tests. A deep tissue biopsy revealed a lattice-like structure within Carter's muscle fibers that was stronger than even the most advanced synthetic materials known to the Galactic Consortium. His neural pathways exhibited unusual activity, indicating a heightened adaptability that surpassed any known species. And then they made the most startling discovery of all. Yvna gasped, her skin flashing a deep violet. Doctor, look at this. Xylox turned to the display, his eyes widening in disbelief. Carter's DNA was evolving. Even as they observed, minute changes were occurring, enhancing, adapting, refining. It was as if his body was rewriting itself in real time to optimize survival. This is, Xylox trailed off, unable to find the words. Impossible? Carter offered with a grin. Xylox took a step back, the weight of the revelation crashing down upon him. The implications were staggering. If humans possessed such latent potential, they were not just another species in the cosmos. They were something far more dangerous. And the universe was not ready for them. Chapter 5. The Impossible Readings. The sterile metallic walls of the Zithri medical station hummed faintly as Dr. Varlik stared at the monitor, his upper tendrils twitching with disbelief. The human, Captain Ethan Ross, sat calmly on the examination table, his arms crossed over his chest, waiting for the doctor to speak. Varlix blinked his 4 golden eyes and turned to his assistant, a younger Zithri named Ilex. Run it again. Ilex hesitated. Doctor, we have run the test 5 times. The results remain unchanged. Then run it a 6th, Varlix snapped, his usual arrogance now tainted with frustration. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Something wrong, Doc? Varlix's mandibles twitched, but he didn't respond immediately. He was too preoccupied with the impossible readings before him. The scans showed a level of biological resilience he had never encountered before, something that defied the known laws of science. Human biology was supposed to be weak compared to the vast array of species in the galaxy. Their bones were fragile, their organs inefficient, their lifespans pitifully short. And yet, the monitor displayed regenerative cellular activity far beyond what should have been possible. neural responses that suggested humans were capable of adapting to injuries at an alarming rate. Even the immune system readings were absurdly robust, capable of neutralizing foreign pathogens faster than Zithri medicine could. Varlix turned back to Ethan, his compound eyes narrowing. "What exactly are you, human?" Ethan chuckled. "Just a guy from Earth." "No," Varlix muttered. "You are something else." The doors to the medical bay hissed open, and General Rachner of the Zyphorian Dominion stepped inside. A towering reptilian warlord, Rachner had been overseeing the testing of human biology ever since they had been captured during a skirmish in the Orion sector. His piercing red eyes flicked between the doctor and the human before settling on the monitor. "What have you found?" Rachner growled. Varlix hesitated before answering. "The human body should not be capable of this. His cells regenerate faster than should be possible. His pain receptors are adapting at an unnatural rate. By all logic, he should not have survived some of the injuries he has sustained in battle." Rachner studied Ethan with renewed interest. "So the rumors were true." Ethan frowned. "What rumors?" The warlord grinned, revealing serrated teeth. "That humanity is not as weak as the galaxy believes." Chapter 6. The experiment that changed everything. Varlix had never questioned his knowledge of xenobiology. He had spent decades studying the physiology of thousands of species, categorizing weaknesses and strengths, developing cures and biological weapons alike. But now, standing before an anomaly he couldn't explain, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. Doubt. Ethan sat strapped into a containment chair, a necessary precaution in case his body reacted unpredictably to the next set of tests. He was surprisingly calm, even smirking slightly as Varlix prepared the neural scanner. "You sure about this, Doc?" Ethan asked. "If I start growing extra arms, I'm blaming you." Varlix huffed. "Highly unlikely." The scanner whirred to life, sending pulses of energy into Ethan's body. On the monitor, neural pathways illuminated like a cosmic web. But something was different. The readings were shifting in real time, adapting to the scanner's output. Varlix's breath hitched. Ethan was evolving before their very eyes. Rachner leaned in, his reptilian pupils narrowing. "Explain." Varlix's voice was almost a whisper. "His body is adapting at an accelerated rate. Every scan, every probe, it's triggering a response. He is learning, evolving in response to stimuli." Alex's tendrils quivered. "That's not possible." Ethan winced as another wave passed through him, but his body relaxed just as quickly. "Feels weird," he admitted, "like I'm getting stronger." Varlix's mandibles twitched. "Stronger?" He adjusted the scanner to a higher frequency. The neural pathways brightened, reorganizing, optimizing. Then the impossible happened. The room's temperature shifted. The very air around Ethan seemed to hum with unseen energy. The scanner let out a shrill beep before overloading entirely, sparks flying as the machinery failed to process the rapid changes occurring in the human body. Ethan's restraints snapped apart. The containment chair shattered as he stood unfazed. His eyes glowed faintly for a brief second before returning to normal. Rachner stepped back, his hand hovering near his energy blade. "What are you?" Ethan exhaled, flexing his fingers. "That's a damn good question." For the first time in his life, Varlix felt genuine fear. Humanity was not weak. It was something else entirely. Chapter 7. The Fracture Between Worlds. The laboratory was eerily silent. The results had changed everything. Dr. Zalzir, a veteran in xenobiology, had spent cycles dissecting, analyzing, and laughing at human frailty. But now, for the first time in his long career, he stood speechless. The human, Captain Elias Voss, sat on the examination table watching the alien's expression. His bruised body told the tale of brutal experimentation, and yet his eyes held defiance. He knew something was wrong. The way the alien doctor's many eyes darted over the glowing holoscreen, the way his tendrils trembled, it all pointed to one thing: fear. "What's the matter, Doc?" Elias said, wincing as he shifted his weight. "Not so funny anymore." Zalzir ignored him, running the data for the 5th time. Every test he had conducted pointed to an impossible conclusion, one that defied everything the Galactic Collective knew about biology. The human immune system should not have been able to adapt so rapidly. His body should have succumbed to the lethal pathogens introduced during testing. And yet not only had Elias survived, he had grown stronger. "This is impossible," Zalzir muttered. "Your biology adapts?" Elias smirked. "Yeah. We humans call it getting tougher." The alien doctor shuddered. This discovery wasn't just shocking, it was dangerous. If the High Council learned that humans were not fragile creatures but evolving weapons, it would shift the balance of power across the galaxy. The laboratory doors hissed open. Overseer Valor, a towering insectoid from the ruling caste, entered. "Doctor, the High Council demands your findings. Have you completed the tests?" Zalzir hesitated. His tendrils coiled with uncertainty. He had always viewed humans as insignificant, but now, they were something else entirely. If the Council knew, humanity would be eradicated before they could reach their full potential. "Doctor?" Valor's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Report." Zalzir took a deep breath. He had a choice to make. Chapter 8. The Lie That Saved Humanity. Zalzir's tendrils hovered over the console, the truth a mere transmission away. He turned to Elias, who was watching him with a mixture of exhaustion and curiosity. The human had endured so much already. Was it right to doom his species for the sake of knowledge? "Overseer," Zalzir finally said, his voice steady, "the results confirm what we initially suspected. The human biology is unsophisticated. Their immune system is weak, their cellular regeneration is subpar, and their genetic adaptability is negligible." Elias blinked. He knew enough from Zalzir's previous reactions to understand that this was a blatant lie. Valor's antennae twitched. "So they are no threat?" Zalzir bowed his head. "None whatsoever." The overseer let out a chittering hum of satisfaction. "Excellent. The Council will be pleased. This experiment is over. Dispose of the subject and erase the records." Elias tensed. He had expected to be discarded like trash, but he had also expected Zalzir to be the one wielding the scalpel. Now the alien doctor was lying to protect him. Wait, Zalzir interjected. "I recommend we return the subject to his people. If we dispose of him, the humans may investigate and become suspicious. But if we return him weakened and humiliated, they will assume we found them unworthy of further study. It will deter them from future contact." Valor considered this. Logical. "Very well. Return him, but ensure his memory of this ordeal is wiped." Elias cursed under his breath. He had no intention of forgetting any of this. As Valor left, Zalzir turned to Elias. "I suggest you make yourself scarce, Captain. If the High Council ever realizes the truth, they will burn your planet to ash." Elias flexed his fingers, his body already adapting to the damage done. He stared at the alien doctor, a strange understanding passing between them. "You saved my life," he said. "Why?" Zalzir exhaled, his tendrils wilting slightly. "Because ignorance is the only thing keeping your species alive." As the human was escorted away, Zalzir felt something foreign, an emotion he had never experienced before. Respect. Chapter 9. The Unfathomable Truth. Dr. Zelver paced the sterile floors of the medical facility, his clawed fingers drumming against his chitinous forearm. The test results lay in front of him, their implications gnawing at his once unshakable certainty. When he had first examined human biology, it had been a spectacle of inefficiency, weak musculature, fragile bones, and an immune system riddled with absurd redundancies. He had scoffed at their resilience, confident that his species, the esteemed Valthrans, were the pinnacle of evolutionary design. But now the numbers on the screen refuted everything he thought he knew. The human patient, subject name, Lieutenant Adrian Rains, had undergone an injury that should have been fatal by Valthran standards. Instead, his body had recovered at an inexplicable rate. Not only had the cellular regeneration outpaced expectations, but new growth patterns had emerged, mimicking Valthran healing methods that required artificial intervention. The results suggested something even more unsettling, a potential for adaptation that bordered on the impossible. Zelver's mandibles clicked in agitation as he turned to his assistant, a young Valthran named Cyril. "Run the tests again," Zelver ordered. "Sir, we've run them 4 times already. The readings are consistent." Zelver exhaled sharply, a series of low, guttural vibrations indicating his frustration. "Then recalibrate the scanners. Perhaps they're malfunctioning." Cyril hesitated. I did that before the last test. The results are unchanged. Human biology, it's adapting, doctor. And not just adapting, evolving. Zelver turned his gaze toward the observation chamber where Adrian lay unconscious. His breath was steady, heart rate optimal, and the signs of his previous injuries were nearly non-existent. If Zelver didn't know better, he would assume the human had undergone advanced Valthorn biotech treatment. Except he hadn't. Zelver stared at the monitor, feeling something he hadn't experienced in years: doubt. Chapter 10, The Awakening. Adrian's eyes fluttered open, and he immediately registered the artificial lighting overhead. The air was cold and sterile, carrying the faint scent of antiseptic. His body felt wrong. Not in pain exactly, but different. He attempted to move, only to find his limbs responding with an unnatural ease. Sitting up, he looked down at his arms. The deep gash that had nearly severed his bicep was gone, replaced with smooth, unblemished skin. His chest wound, which should have kept him bedridden for weeks, was non-existent. A sharp hiss announced the opening of the chamber door. Zelver entered, his usual arrogance replaced with a cautious, almost reverent demeanor. "How do you feel?" the alien doctor asked. Adrian flexed his fingers. "Like I just took a nap after getting run over by a freight train." Zelver observed him for a long moment before exhaling slowly. "Lieutenant Rains, something is happening to you, to your species." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Zelver hesitated before pulling up a holographic projection of Adrian's test results. "Your body should have succumbed to its injuries days ago. Instead, it has not only healed, it has evolved." Adrian stared at the screen, his mind struggling to comprehend the implications. "I don't understand," he admitted. Zelver leaned forward. "Neither do I. But it appears that human biology is rewriting its own limitations." A chill ran through Adrian. He had survived battlefields, radiation zones, and conditions that should have killed him. But if what Zelver was saying was true, if humanity was evolving at a rate beyond known science, then the war between their species had just become far more complicated. Because if humans could adapt, they could win. Chapter 11, The Unraveling Mystery. The medical station aboard the Zifrin vessel buzzed with an unfamiliar tension. Dr. Valor, once so confident in his assessment of human biology, found himself staring at the test results in complete disbelief. The numbers, the markers, the cellular compositions, it was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, biologically inefficient, and primitive. Yet the data suggested otherwise. A human body should not be able to regenerate at this rate. It should not be capable of adapting so rapidly to foreign biomes. And yet, here was Lieutenant James Carter, sitting upright on the examination table, looking healthier than he had any right to be after the near-fatal injuries he sustained only days prior. "You're looking at me like I'm supposed to be dead," Carter said, stretching his arms with a wry grin. Dr. Valor clenched his jaw. "You should be dead." "Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence, document." Carter swung his legs over the table, ignoring the way the Zifrin assistants watched him like an anomaly, because as far as they were concerned, he was. The doctor turned sharply to his medical team. "Run the scans again. Every test. Check for anomalies." "We have, doctor." One of his assistants, a younger Zifrin named Relkin, replied hesitantly. "This data has been confirmed multiple times. The human adapts." Valor exhaled sharply. He didn't like this. He had laughed at the human's biology, dismissed it as weak, yet now it was rewriting what he knew about physiology. This was beyond resilience. This was something else entirely. "Tell me, Carter," Valor said slowly, "has your kind experienced similar unexplained regenerative abilities before?" Carter shrugged. "I don't know, document. I got banged up in a lot of places and I just get better. It's always been that way. I figured it was normal." Normal. The word made Valor's mandibles twitch in irritation. There was nothing normal about this. He pulled up the scans again, highlighting the sections where Carter's cellular structure had not only repaired but enhanced itself. Human biology, it seemed, wasn't just healing, it was evolving. And if that was the case, the implications were staggering. Valor turned to his superior, Commander Shelvek, who had been watching the entire exchange. "Sir, I recommend an immediate full-scale biological analysis of the human species." Shelvek narrowed his large reptilian eyes. "Explain." "There is something about their physiology that defies what we know. If Carter's biology is any indication, humans are not merely surviving. They are adapting at a rate far beyond what should be possible. The commander observed Carter for a long moment. And if this is true? Vale hesitated before responding. Then we may have underestimated their potential in ways that could change everything. Chapter 12. The Hidden Code. The revelation of human biology's unexplained resilience spread rapidly through the Zifran scientific community. Meetings were called. Data was reanalyzed. And in the shadows of the discussions, a far more unsettling discovery was made. Dr. Vale hadn't slept in 2 rotations. The more he studied, the more the pieces didn't add up. The adaptive properties, the rapid healing, even the increased neural efficiency in response to stress. It all pointed to a hidden variable. Something buried deep within human DNA that should not exist. And then he saw it. His eyes widened as he ran a new sequence alignment through their most advanced genetic modeling. There, buried within the genetic code of humanity, was an anomaly, one that should not have been there. What in the void? He muttered, hands shaking. Doctor? Relkin called nervously from across the lab. Vale didn't respond. He merely gestured for the assistant to come closer. Look at this. The young Zifran leaned in, his yellow eyes scanning the screen. His frills twitched as he processed the data. That's impossible. I thought so too. Vale's voice was barely above a whisper. This sequence, it isn't natural. It was engineered. Relkin reeled back. Engineered? By who? Vale exhaled, the weight of the discovery pressing down on him. If humans had been altered, if something or someone had interfered with their evolution, then everything they thought they knew about Earth species was flawed. He didn't have an answer, but one thing was certain. The universe had many secrets. And humans, it seemed, were one of its most well-kept mysteries. We need to inform the High Council immediately. As Vale prepared to transmit his findings, he couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was only the beginning. If humanity had been designed for something greater, then what or who had done it? And more importantly, why? Chapter 13. The Impossible Condition. The sterile, dimly lit laboratory buzzed with quiet urgency as Dr. Velith stared at the screen. The test results were irrefutable. The human subject, Elias Carter, should not have survived. His cellular structure had undergone changes no known biological system could explain. His metabolic functions defied standard models. The first assumption had been contamination, but after 3 separate rounds of verification, the results held steady. This is not possible, Velith muttered, his mandibles twitching in distress. He had spent decades studying the fragile, inefficient, and laughably redundant biological systems of humans. They were a species that needed constant hydration, food at absurdly frequent intervals, and were plagued by disease. Yet here was an anomaly. Elias, the human in question, sat at the edge of the examination table, looking from Velith to the screen. So am I dying or not? He asked with a casual air that grated against Velith's rising panic. Velith flicked his compound eyes toward him. You should be. But you are not. Elias frowned. Not the best bedside manner. Care to elaborate? Velith tapped a few buttons, bringing up a magnified scan of Elias' blood. Your white blood cells exhibit a form of regenerative adaptability I have never seen before. They do not just fight infections, they restructure damaged tissue at an accelerated rate. Moreover, your oxygen processing has nearly doubled in efficiency, yet your heart rate remains within normal human parameters. This is unnatural. Elias exhaled slowly. Well, Doc, forgive me if I don't find that reassuring. Velith did not. This was a paradox, one that defied everything he knew of both human and alien biology. It demanded further study. We need to run more tests, he said. Immediately. Elias groaned. Great. More needles. Chapter 14. Unraveling the Truth. The medical team worked in silence, drawing blood, running scans, testing Elias in every way possible. The data was disturbing. Every biological response in his system had adapted to optimize survival beyond human limitations. Yet there was no clear cause. Dr. Velith analyzed the timeline of Elias' condition, cross-referencing it with his prior medical history. 3 months ago he had suffered severe radiation exposure after an accident on an exploration vessel. He should have suffered long-term effects, genetic degradation, immune failure, even organ damage. Instead, his body had restructured itself as if reprogramming its own DNA. The question was, how? Doctor, one of the assistants, Jexera, turned from her monitor, her tendrils shifting in unease. The genetic analysis just completed. Look at this. Velith examined the screen. His secondary set of arms clenched involuntarily. This sequence. It is not human. Elias, sitting nearby, blinked. Excuse me. Velith hesitated, trying to find the proper way to phrase what was, in essence, impossible. Your genome contains an additional sequence. It is structured in a way that suggests non-human origin. Silence stretched in the room. Elias processed the words. Are you saying, I'm not human anymore? Velith considered. You are human. But something within you is changing that fact. Jexera looked at Elias cautiously. This might explain the regeneration, the enhanced oxygen processing. If this foreign sequence is rewriting sections of your DNA, then what's it rewriting me into? Elias interrupted, his voice tight. No one had an answer. Velith straightened. We must determine the origin of this sequence. We will need access to your ship's logs, its environmental data, and any recorded anomalies. Whatever altered you, we need to understand it. Elias leaned back, exhaling sharply. So, what you're telling me is that I might be the first human-alien hybrid, and we have no idea what's coming next. Velith's mandibles clicked together. That is an oversimplification. But not incorrect. Elias ran a hand through his hair. You sure do know how to make a guy feel special. The laboratory remained tense. Because in truth no one, human or alien, had any idea what Elias was becoming. And whether they could stop it.